May is Mental Health Month, so I figured a little poking around with color theory might be a good brain exercise. That and everyone else in my art group was doing it, so I'm embarrassed to say I've never done this before. Making a color mixing chart should be basic training for a painter, right? I've gotten by so far without thinking too much about the science side of it all. Hopefully, in going over this chart with you, I'll be able to better wrap my head around some of the basics. The paints are the Daniel Smith Essentials set. The paper is Strathmore 300 Series Cold Press, and I'm using a 10-round Princeton Snap brush. My confidence took an early dive when I had to use bleed-proof white as correction fluid before I'd even picked up a brush. But everyone knows those little oopsies just add character. The colors we're working with here are Hansa Yellow Light, New Gamboge, Pyrrole Scarlet, Quinacridone Rose, French Ultramarine, and Phthalo Blue Green shade. From what I gather, this is what's called a split primary palette. That means you have the three primary colors in both warm and cool versions. I understand this results in a nice broad range of color variation. I'll take the expert's word for it, since I'm barely past the "ooh, pretty colors" stage of color theory. The way this works is from the top left to the bottom right, diagonally, are the colors in their unadulterated forms. Maybe there's a name for that, but I'm going to call it the median line. Now, I've seen this done in a couple of ways. One option is to have each side of the median line be heavier on one color over the other. But as I was already struggling to keep things straight in my head, it seemed best to simplify everything. So I went with the strong/weak option. Above and to the right are the full-strength mixes. Below and to the left are those same mixes, just watered down for paler versions. At least that was the goal. An example of the warm and cool thing, look at the top two squares in the far right column. The top square is phthalo blue green shade mixed with Hansa yellow light, which is cool. The square below it is phthalo blue green shade mixed with new gamboge, which is warm. So the two yellows give quite different mixing results. That may be demonstrated better in the French ultramarine column. You know, maybe people wouldn't hesitate to make these charts if the paint people didn't use esoteric terminology like quinacridone, gamboge, phthalo, French. I could analyze every square, but I didn't do a great job on this chart. Some of my mixes are too weak or simply unbalanced. But in my opinion, the point isn't to use someone else's mixing chart, it's to make your own, because it's about you getting to know your paints. At only 6 colors, this was probably the right level for me. Any more, and I might have ended up wandering the neighborhood at 4 a.m. arguing the necessity of quinacridone rose with the viburnums. I can handle months of self-isolation, but my first mixing chart was a little more challenging than expected. If you want to see color mixing by someone who knows what she's doing, visit Otto Kano's channel. I don't know of anyone on YouTube who is better than her at demonstrating color theory. Part of this exercise was to experience the mixing chart ordeal. Fun. But another part was to get a handle on these new-to-me paints. So now that I've played around with Daniel Smith, yeah, I am kinda loving them. The only other paints I've used that compare are M-grams, which leads to the question, which do I prefer? Look, neither is perfect. The thing keeping me from going all in with M-gram is their perpetual tackiness, which makes it potentially difficult to travel with and to fix those "you've got your chocolate in my peanut butter" moments. Whereas pricing is what stops me from totally embracing the Daniel Smith brand. But this essential set is a pretty good way to dip your toe into the Daniel Smith paint pool without making a heavy financial commitment. Look at the variation you can get with just these 6 tubes. That is a workable palette right there. I'm happy to share my first mixing chart experience. Yes, it was past time for me to do one, and yes, I was still underprepared. But nothing wakes you up better than a splash of cold paint water in the face, figuratively speaking, although literally would work too. Until next time, stay chartsy, my friends. I need to get out.